I'm the coordinator of Sisters Advocating Globally, the advocacy project at UISG. I've been working with UISG since July 2020, which is when the project was launched as an initiative, as we were saying, to really, do two things, in fact. Our goal is twofold. On the one hand, it's to empower sisters who are advocating on social and environmental justice, so for the well-being of our planet and all its people, and to empower sisters especially in advocating for and with the communities that they serve. So on behalf of the people that they accompany, but also opening up spaces with those people in mind, ultimately with the goal of empowering others to advocate for themselves. And then secondly, the goal of this project is also to enhance the visibility and the recognition of the work of sisters so that their wisdom and their expertise can be utilized by the international community to foster change that's sustainable and systemic. And really, I've come to understand in the past 2 or 3 years that these are both challenges of cultural change. So on the one hand, cultural change within the global sisterhood, a change that regards the way advocacy is seen. We talk about kind of establishing advocacy as a pillar of mission for women religious. And on the other hand, it's also a cultural change within the development community, where for decades, in fact, we could say that religion in many kind of sectors was seen as a force that sometimes blocked change. And what we're trying to do is show the many manifold ways in which religious sisters build bridges and kind of channel grassroots knowledge to create change on the highest level. Really what their potential is to link the local to the global. All of this work is new in its project form at UISG, but it's rooted in a vision that has underpinned the work of sisters for many centuries, a vision that's based on the intrinsic dignity of people and the sacredness of our common home. It's also, of course, responsive to the great urgency of our times. We see sisters and their allies as part of a global movement to shape development conversations around the needs of local communities, of people on the front lines, which is, I think, emerging as really the only way to resolve the challenges that we face as a global community. So I guess just to kind of contextualize us for today, I wanted to share some of the ways that working with this project has shaped the way that I think about female religious leadership, particularly in relation to development. I think it's fair to say that the global sisterhood is undergoing what we sometimes describe as an epoch-defining shift, a real kind of historical change from a focus more exclusively on direct service at the local level, which has been a lifeline to local communities for many, many centuries, but largely invisible in the halls of power, towards a different and more nuanced balance of charity and justice work, with a focus, as we were saying, on channeling grassroots engagement to hold power to account, to create change at the highest systemic level. UISG is proud to be part of this movement, which is gaining momentum as a result of changes within the Catholic Church and as the mirror of broader societal changes as well that seek inclusivity in leadership from the margins. And very briefly to, I guess, inspire our discussion today, there are 3 things that I want to highlight about the potential for transformation that I've witnessed here at UISG. Things that I certainly didn't know before I started working with the sisters at UISG, and that, might kind of shape the way that we think about today's discussion. So firstly, one of my great learnings has been that sisters have created and implemented incredibly strong mechanisms for democratic participation. Looking at congregations from the outside, we might think of them as hierarchical, and in some ways they are, but it turns out that unlike patriarchal hierarchies within the church, women-led hierarchies can and do incorporate very robust systems for inclusion and for participation at all levels, from the grassroots to the highest level of congregational representation, for example, at the United Nations. Secondly, and one of my great joys in terms of working for and with sisters, Sisters are exemplary anti-capitalists, and by this I mean that they profoundly reject the logic of consumption, but also the logic of compulsive production, which is harder to challenge and harder to untangle. And this is clear in relation, for example, to work strategies, to the real kind of practicalities of time management. I sometimes think that the work of sisters functions on a pre-industrial relationship with time, where each piece of work takes the time that it takes. And I think we have so much to learn from this perspective. And finally, in my experience, sisters are not at all bound by what I think we could describe as the tyranny of the tangible. Catholic sisters understand that all change, however global, broad in scope, comes from the individual, from the person, and that the person has a spiritual dimension. So the work of sisters so often is to create space for the intangible, regardless of the pressure to perform or to produce, to make the space for that root, for that seed of change. I hope this gives us a general sense of the perception that I've developed, which is essentially that UISG is a 600,000 strong collective of highly democratized, anti-capitalist and deeply spiritual change makers. And it's our great pleasure to welcome you today into this collective. I'm so grateful to see you all here. It's been such a journey for the advocacy project to arrive at this point, and I think it's really the starting point for great things to come. So thank you and welcome.